All right. Got 4 more chapters. Let's get through this. I will be honest, I would probably boost through this most months just to get it done because I tend to have the boosts. I'm not going to this time simply because not everyone can and the tuning is part of it. But let's focus on this. Okay. So Toad and Sentinel are both significant threats, honestly. And who else on here is? We gotta watch for War Machine. Misty's a bit annoying. We should probably save Prowler for her, or maybe Bastion. Longshot could be a problem, but somebody like Omega Sentinel will be fine. And don't use a robot for Nebula. Hey, Nightmare. Welcome back. But okay, who am I going to use for Sentinel? Probably just somebody with good access to armor ups. I'm not really worried beyond that. Cuts burst damage, so we want to be a bit careful with that. So somebody like Guardian's probably pretty good. Don't worry about it, Aiden. I wasn't in my best headspace either. How's it going, Vader? That's acceptable, Elijah. How's it going, TC? Speak of the devil. Yeah, I feel like Guardian's probably just the right move. Sentinel's big enough, I'm willing to use the rank 3. Is this boring? Absolutely. Am I gonna let Sentinel get out of control? No, thank you. It's okay, TC. You're allowed to disagree with people on subjective things. No, that's fine to ask, Retin. That's correct. Just because it's getting an update does not mean that magic is coming. Excuse me. I was moving a pretzel bag. Don't like how her kit fluctuates. She's rewarded for not hitting the opponent while they're stunned, but she's extra rewarded for intercepts, which she can only do while the opponent's below bar power, but she wants them to be at 2 bars for maximum damage. I can understand that. That is kind of the core skill expression of her, I would say, but I get where you're coming from. Um, We're close enough to the front. I'm going to use the small Viv. Get away from the wall, shall we? Come on, throw it. You know you want to. Alright, I won't pretend that one non-well-timed block we took didn't hurt. But I'll take that for a famously fragile 6-star champion punching up. I don't know, I think, like, you are allowed to not enjoy that tension in her kit, TC. I want to lead off with that. But I will say you might be taking it as more rigid than it is. A character having a benefit for something does not mean that they have to pursue that, right? Like in the case of Spider-Woman, yes, she likes intercepting and she can intercept when the opponent's below a bar, but after that, she's tanky enough with inequity and other things. She can bait heavies, she can punish specials, right? Like, if you still want them to get to that high power, there are other techniques that you can use. And you can use the striker to kind of take control and push them to that high power in one specific moment, right? You don't always have to have them up. And then when you combine that with the fact that you don't need as many Furies when she's at high Sig, it's kind of a reward for leveling her up. So I don't personally feel that tension the same way that you're describing, but I get what you mean. Alright, this is probably a good spot for Ultron because his functions won't care about the concussions. Yeah, she has a very good intercept animation, Elijah, for sure. Come here. Opponent loves to just back off during the evade. Give me an extra unique function, you coward. That one was my fault, because I dodged again. Hey, Neos. I feel like some of my messages didn't get through. Basically, her debilitates allowed to always push. Yeah, I think at least one did drop. Mhm. I don't really have that same tension against Rintra's special one. I think I try to aim the decks at the end rather than in the middle. No, but it's okay. Like don't feel bad about that kind of feedback because, and this is really important to anybody wondering why I might respond this way, whereas sometimes I am less generous. The thing is that at no point in here has TC said, and that's why the kit is designed poorly and should be different because I am not enjoying it. Right? Like, this is the kind of feedback that comes up in our internal playtests, that comes up in our design reviews. It's going to happen because different people have different preferences. And the key part is for the designer to decide, okay, that changes things enough that I'm going to try and remove that tension in the kit. Or they can say, yeah, but that's kind of the point, and that's what I'm going for, and so I'm going to stick to my guns here because at least some other people are having fun, right? And so, like, that's fair. That's part of the dialogue. Thanks, TZ. I appreciate the permission for outrage. Uh, yeah, it's kind of like the. This is actually. I was talking to somebody else about this recently, Vader. It's like I think there's sometimes a bit of confusion around like feedback itself can be subjective versus objective, but often that's not the actual point of tension in conversation. It's more about like your conclusions, right? Because you will run into people who give subjective feedback and then provide an objective conclusion without qualification, or vice versa. Um, and like that's where things get ugly. I am generally having fun, Zephyr, but I do think that the attack is a little overtuned, and I have thoughts on how we could structure it differently. Excuse me. Okay, thanks for... I forgot about this. Why did I forget about this? Ugh. Okay, this is gonna take 7 years. No, it's not, because we're gonna build attack, and that only affects our hits anyway, and this is why Lady Deathstrike wasn't tuned differently, because ramping her attack on her actual hits is fine. We'll be okay. And it's even fine to lose ferocity because we don't care about it with the first. Alright, come here. I wasn't thinking about Silk's rupture interaction. Purely because I was like, I just want a tech who actually crits. Because they're not that common. Moving on. Breton, why did you ask the question and then follow it up with, why not? Like, there's a lot of room in between October and the rest of the year. Yeah, that's a good way to put it, Vader. Yeah, like another example of this, Leroy, is like if you don't enjoy a particular kind of food, right? You can say, like, you can give specific, still subjective notes, like comparative things, right? It's too sweet for me. It's too spicy. I don't find the flavors like balanced to my tastes, right? You can also say very broadly, like, not for me, right? I find when things get rude is when you like take your subjective experience and present it as an objective statement of quality, saying something like, this tastes like poop. Now you have compared it directly to something. And like it doesn't matter if you go, well, it's just my opinion that it tastes like poop. No, you're being insulted, right? Like that's not how you do that. And I think that is particularly a problem for anything artistic, right? Food is art, design, like character design here is art, music, film, all of those things are art. You need to be careful, like, with that kind of subjective as objective comparison. Okay. Yeah, this is a decent place for Sam. Let's do it. I saw somebody else say that too, Clubs. One second. Pulling up his code. Please hold. Okay. Drain, drain. Oh no, I know what happened. I know what happened. Okay, I sent it. Should I have scheduled it for Monday instead of tagging someone over the weekend? Absolutely, but I didn't think about it and I hit the button too fast. I really hate the knockdown one. Like, the fact that it applies to instance too in a tech chapter is just, like... That's how they do their damage. Anyway. That was better. Ironheart was bugged for a while, but only on damage, which I think leaves the point intact. Oh, come on. That precision is not long enough. I forgot how short that was. I don't remember either, honestly, and I'm not putting this on KT. It's just the community in general. The consensus on Ironheart seemed to be that she's slow, but also that the utility she provides isn't worth the trade-off. And you would hear people say things like, well, if she's not fast enough to Battlegrounds and you never send her in war over somebody like Warlock, then what is she good for? And it's the second part of that that has aged really poorly. Again, not putting that on KT. Watch his video. But that was my issue with the consensus. Can't just leave a carrot like that. It's a really... It's like hard to discuss publicly because it comes from things that we never really disclosed. But basically there was a damage tagging cleanup and Green Goblin is old and so is looking for those old tags that are no longer there. So it'll get fixed. Oof. Sorry to hear that, Elijah. I'm sure you're already gone, but hope the work is quick. Those are definitely armors. Wasn't this updated to say effects? Was it not? There is a version that uses effects. What the heck is going on here? Many, many times, Arun. He works fine. It's just visual. Okay, well, some of the complaints about how narrow this chapter are make more sense if armor-up passives aren't working the way they're supposed to. Yeah, I saw that, Omega. Huge congrats. Good old Spark hitboxes. Mes amis. Thank you. Having to wait for the frickin' dot thing to fall off so that I can actually convert the shocks because their potency is locked in definitely makes this fight more annoying. But also means once we're ramped we can do this and it's fine. Bye-bye. Okay, that sucked. I swear there was an effect version of this. Am I making that up? Where did I... Yeah. Yeah. We got a new G crit icon recently. I honestly... No, I don't forget what for. That was part of the cleanup I did. Oh, constructive as always. There is a version with passives? Then... Yeah, I swear there's a version with passives. Where is the other one? Does anyone remember what it's called? Because clearly it's not also called Power Technician. Okay, hold on. I gotta switch accounts to find this. Oh, that's annoying. Oh, I'm thinking of the dress code update. They fixed that, but not this. Okay, well then that's just a mistake. Yeah. I'm thinking of the update to dress code. Because they realized that dress code was too restrictive. So they expanded that. Okay, I'm not going to tag anyone with that because I'm sure that's part of the ongoing discussion of updating the various effects. Because bluntly, these days, it's just not defensible for it to be armor ups only. Well, that's fun. That's going to make the Misty so much worse. USB-C clubs. Yes, they are. You have to use their dongle, and it is necessitating of impolite words. No, we did not, TZ. Few overlapping reasons, but the main one being that Prowlers is 100%, and that's not really a great thing for design space going forward. Okay, who's next? War Machine? That's fine. I love that for both of y'all, Leroy. I am glad you have found that kind of love. Happy weekend. Yeah, I woke up this morning and my wife went and turned on Great British Bake Off as I made us pour over. Watched a bit of it, came up here. Love weekends. Alright, drain thyself. Thank you. Regen, please. I mean, that wouldn't have changed, TC, because it's still a power drain. Cosmics are still immune. Yeah, no, I know Black Hole, but I still... There's, like... These days, there's not really a reason for this to not benefit Shuri and Bastion, right? Because you're opening it up to just a handful. It's like Iron Man Infinity War, Shuri, Bastion. You're making Lady Deathstrike better. And, like, that's kind of the extent of the change. Who else has actual armor-up passives? Like, you're already restricting it to the tech class. You don't need to go narrower. I don't think it's a design decision to keep it that way. I think it is purely just how old it is. Solvark, thank you. See, I don't have him yet, so he doesn't exist. They also just need to take Black Widow off this dang map. I think I'm willing to use Red Skull on her because she's going to be annoying. I mentioned Iron Man Infinity War. That is what the IMIW stands for, by the way. Immediate first hit. Second hit! What is going on over there? Ma'am. I love that. I absolutely love that for me, because that's how her hit stun should work, is to just completely make it impossible for you to dex out of her frickin' special one if you're even a frame off. Yep, there it is again. How does her block stun last that long? Whoops. Okay. Slickroy. That was awful. Would be nice to have Iron Man here. Oh, you know what? Zola. Zola's healing would be nice. I'm not dumb enough to use him against Misty, but I'll keep that in mind. It's not really true, Black Hole. Half the champions we just named are on the older side. Shuri is older than Ironheart. Somebody else. We put armor up buffs on Sentinel. Those very easily could have been passives. There's somebody else I'm forgetting. Future Ant-Man is more recent than Shuri, too. Ultron healing is nice, but I did already use my 6-star. This is a rank 3, right? No, I still haven't done that. I will. Already used Iron Man, and used his healing. Bastion does count as a new tech who has an armor up passive, yes. I'm just saying that, like, I don't think that it's, like, old techs use buffs, new techs use passives. I don't think that that is a fair thing to say. Oops. No. I don't know why I tried to block that. I looked at it and I was like, it's a different color, it doesn't matter. The dangers messing with iconography. I waited for the Thulter to come back. Yeah, but that was enough. I'm not going to dignify the suggestion that I have a Iron Patriot ranked high enough to matter with a response. My Hulkbuster is sadly not doomed. War Machine is very high save. That is a good shout, so I appreciate that. Obviously can't do that against Longshot, but that's fine. Thanks for being a member, Leroy. I appreciate you. Hey, Shade, how's it going? I do have rank 4 Viv. But see, Black Hole, that's like that's really twisting it with your framing there. Like, you can say that the last 8 tech champs don't have armor up buffs, but only 2 of them have passives. And that's ignoring the tech champion that was buffed in that same timeline that was given buffs. And the fact that 9 ago has a bunch of buffs. Like, I understand what you're saying, and you are technically correct, but that is like a very curated take on it. Karolina would be the top one, null, to pair with my Nico, but I will take any of the 4 that I don't have. I'm not brave enough to eat that special one because I probably net heal off of it. Given that I wouldn't take any damage from the bleeds and it would trigger my regen, but I'm just not brave enough for that. I mean, if Karolina gets touched by rebalancing, I don't think the glancing would be affected, because it's already weaker than normal glancing. If the team decides that anything needs to happen to her, it would almost certainly be just her overall damage output. Nice, easy. I chuckled at that, TC. Yeah, no, I know Neos, and that's why Penny's so good for it. It's just that these days there's no reason to keep armor ups out. And I'm not really sure that there was even when the node first came out. I think that was just like the person who designed it very quickly thought, okay, yeah, that's what techs do. They have armor up buffs. And so they built the node and they didn't really look back. Okay, how do I safely get under 20%? I have to get under 15, don't I? Okay, come here. Let me heavy. There we go. Why, yes, this is an incredibly high sig war machine. Why do you ask? For a minute, I thought you were calling me an old man, Shafali. Oh, I'm not saying it is a weak mechanic, null. It's just intentionally weaker than other glancing, and so, like, I don't see that getting changed. No shade, but shade. God. I understand you weren't trying to be rude, but you can't do that. Have you seen Game of Thrones? There's the Ned Stark quote really early on where he says everything that comes after but is BS. I think that's not 100% true, but for something like that, it certainly can be. Touching on your thoughts in order, though, I didn't say it wasn't a valid question. I said you can't, like, you can't say no shade and then immediately throw shade and pretend you didn't. You can say intend no disrespect, but you can't take the shade out of the shade. Okay, so first off, I know that y'all probably think that this is a biased take, but I actually don't agree that it's more likely that Nico gets nerfed than Karolina, and I maybe shouldn't address this at all, but I'm going to real quickly, because it might be interesting to some of y'all. So Nico hits the cosmic class really hard, yes, but she does so because her explicit goal was to use buff immunity again, and we needed more buff immunity so that we could start reacting to it. I explained that in the spotlight with context. Um, I also want to say that, like, it's tempting to look at her buff immunity and think that it is stronger than Claire's because it lasts 1 extra second. But we were very intentional about not giving her the same access to power gain that Claire has, right? She doesn't have the broad immunity trigger. She only gains power on the opponent's immunity to buffs. She doesn't have Mystic Dispersion, so she can't do the Claire thing of, oh, I don't have access to buff immunity, so I'm just going to wait for a buff to expire, and then boom, look, I have a special 2. Her buff immunity does refresh, which is a nice upgrade, but it is applied on the last hit of the special 2, not on activation. All of that is very intentional. Cute, Arun. But all of that is very intentional, and it is why, like, we felt that we could ship her where she is. She is, as far as I am concerned, meeting her goals, and she has enough points of failure for things to move forward. She is sustainable. She does enough damage for Battlegrounds, but she is a long way from a nuke. I have seen a ton of people die or time out with her in various places. She has points of failure. I don't think that she is likely to come in a problematic spot. If she is, and we have to tune her down, I'm not going to fight it. But, like, I actually think that her performance, even with what y'all are saying, is in line with her targets. I think there is a possibility that Carolina might actually be overshooting her damage targets, right? And so that is kind of a different thing, if that makes sense. Yeah, exactly, Null. The 40% ability accuracy reduction is weaker than the standard 100%. No, Shafali. I was wondering because you. That's so funny. Bluntly, your phrasing construction felt a bit more male. Are you on your sister's account or something? Because you've crossed the line too many times elsewhere? That's funny. Hey, Sim. Appreciate you checking in. See, I'm not really convinced about lower HP black hole. Um, if the attacker beneficial nodes were opened up a little bit, just a little bit, to more consistently allow modern characters to key into them, the health is fine. We have not been taking that long here. The problem is the attack, in my opinion. Because, like, it's if you punch up, it should take longer, right? But you should be less likely to be deleted. You should be less likely to lose 20% of your health and chip damage in a single fight. But I don't think the health is actually that high. Like, people compare it to other pieces of content where the attacker doesn't get 350% extra attack and say, look, it's higher. How can that be appropriate? Well, it's because the attacker doesn't get 350% extra attack in those other places. But I do think that the attack is too high. If you could plan everything out absolutely perfectly, TC, and we were using an original IP and not one sourced from someone else, then sure. But as well as I think Adrenaline does fit within the Mystic class, it's not going to fit on everyone. And somebody also had to take the first step and like deal with, the various complications, right? We weren't really going to know how difficult it was to put Adrenaline on a kit until we did it. And I had been the one leading the development of the tech behind Adrenaline, so it kind of made the most sense for me to do it. And Nico is literally a blood mage. I cannot imagine someone else being better to introduce Adrenaline than her. And similarly, I think that she was actually very well situated to use buff immunity, not just because of her lore of, like, what her magic can do in the comics, but specifically because of the once per quest pre-fight thing. Because that allowed us to make it stronger in battlegrounds than it is in war, and to really make it weaker in long questing formats. And I think that kind of drawback, even if you're not feeling it as much right now because the game tends to be so battleground centric, was important for the second use of buff immunity. So, like, I get what you're saying. Her kit certainly would have been easier to make simple if I had only done one of the two. But I really do think that she was perfect for both of them. Oh yeah, no, I love Karolina's Kit Vader. I'm not throwing any shade on the design, and I'm not even trying to say that the balance team potentially messed up there. It's just that when she came out, it felt like she was doing things that we weren't fully intending on, which is exactly what would happen if somebody were overshooting their targets. So I just think that, like, again, I'm not saying either will or won't be nerfed, but I think if we were running odds internally, not externally, I know what the community thinks. Internally, I think the smart money would actually be on Karolina coming down over Nico. But we'll see. Is a champion's ease of use taken into account when looking at rebalance for damage? It kind of depends on what you mean. Like, we look at it in the sense that, like, the balance team will look at both how a character is performing in general and in the hands of the most skilled players, and they will look at them separately. But ease of use is not something that we're cool with people, like, we don't use it to min-max things, right? Just because a character is hard to use doesn't mean that they can get away with murder. Yeah, I get that easy for sure. There we go. There's definitely an element of that as well, TC. Because adrenaline, like, especially the way that I felt Mystics should be using adrenaline, which is the way Nico is, as in trading it for another resource, in this case, sacrificing your own health to access it. That's the kind of thing that people have historically not responded to well. See iHulk. And even though I felt like I solved it, that doesn't mean that people are going to take it well, you know? Oh, yeah. And I'm fully with you there, leader. Or Vader, excuse me. Um, Yeah. Even if Karolina does not hit quite as hard as she currently does, I think she would be a fantastic champion. Completely agreed. I mean, I wouldn't even necessarily call it an oversight. Like, I think I know the point you're making, and I know you're not trying to be critical, but I want to kind of say here that I think I said earlier that design is art, and I meant it. Um, I think a lot of the community thinks that because we're working with numbers and time and immunities and we're coding in for the game and that kind of thing, they think that this is a science. And we try to be as scientific as we possibly can with this, right? Especially when we're doing balance tuning. But ultimately, on some level, we are still guessing. We're making very educated guesses. I trust our guesses over people being angry online. But we are having to kind of put together the best thing that we possibly can with the most thought and intention behind it, and then put it out and just kind of hope it works out the way that we intended it to. And some percentage of the time, we're going to be a little bit wrong, right? Like, I say that Kate, we definitely should have tuned her damage lower. But part of the reason that we made that mistake is because we were trying to account for these other things, and we misweighed a few variables, right? But see, that's the thing, TC, is that like I understand why you would make that distinction, but I don't even think that that is true. Like, there is a reason that our balance designers are considered to be designers. They are trying to be as scientific as they can, same as us, but like it is an art. There is not really a blueprint for this. Yeah, I think I'll leave it there. Block proficiency is definitely defensible for future Ant-Man. Um, I think crit rating also is, because even though most of his damage is red numbers, he does get pretty large attack rating increases. So he can ultimately have some decent yellow numbers. One penny rotation didn't kill. I take it all back. The health pools are over too. I am kidding, but that is surprising. Woo! That medium crit sucked. Alright, I have one of those in overflow for like the next 12 hours, so I'm gonna use the smaller one. No decision has been made that I've seen, Onage, but probably not. Like, if it were my call, they would not be able to keep them. I would definitely claw them back. I'd, of course, refund the money they spent on them, but I don't think they should keep them. What Rhino buff are we on? I mean, buffs were so bare bones back when Rhino got his first one that it feels to me like the first. But I guess this is the second, excuse me, technically the second. That's what I put together in my head there. Okay. Yes, absolutely, Leroy. And that is like, so getting a little bit deep in another way here for a minute. Many of you know, but some of you probably don't. When I applied to Kabam, I applied for the balance job. Um, and I made it into the finals. They picked someone else over me, but then they were like, "You seem like you might like champion design. You want to talk about that?" And so the rest is history. But the reason I applied for the balance job in the first place, for one thing, the champion design role wasn't publicly open at the time. But the reason I applied for balance is because I came from a background of music performance. And music performance is usually not composition, at least on the classical side. Like, a lot of us dabble. A lot of us do arrangements, but for the most part, if you are a classical music performance major, and often even if you're in other kinds of performance, you are performing somebody else's work, right? And the way I always felt about that was that I was kind of like an editor. I was polishing what they were doing for the future or for consumption. And funnily enough, like I played trombone ownage, and one of the things that one of my professors would say is, there's not a lot of concerto music written for trombones. We've been a little bit neglected historically there. And so some of our solo pieces are less than amazing, right? There is no Mozart trombone concerto. There is no Beethoven trombone concerto. And so what my teacher would say is sometimes we were polishing turds. But the thing is that that's the job, right? The job is to be able to add enough life to it, to change this phrase here, to like slow down, speed up, to shape the dynamics just enough that you can polish that turd into something enjoyable. That's that's the goal. Oh, hi Chris, I didn't see you there earlier. Like that is the art that you are bringing to performance. It's why you're not just, as my another one of my teachers would pejoratively say sometimes, it's why you're not just a trombone jock. It's why you're a musician. Because you have that extra artistic decision making that you bring to it. And that is how I see the balance design process as well, right? Like bluntly, there have been times in history when the balance team has been handed some stinkers and been asked to artistically deliver something really special. And I think they've succeeded, but that is because there is art in their job. And even when they are handed something very good, which they often are, because I think that our character design team is very good at what we do, there's still art in that tuning. There's still art in that editing, just as if you were editing a novel or, polishing, just polishing in general, or if you were like finishing a recipe that somebody else gave you, but you turned it into your own dish, right? Yeah. Tuning is still creation, and creation is artistic. We've talked about this a bit earlier, Chris. I am very sympathetic to the attack coming down. I really don't think that the health should come down much, if at all. There's certainly an argument that it should come down because I am starting, like, I have The fights where I've had to punch up with 6 stars have been a little bit rough, but also like they kind of should be because I'm dipping down into that part of my roster, and there should be an incentive for my roster to continue to grow. And I don't feel that incentive if I'm reaching down into my ascended 6 stars and I'm still rushing through things in 50 seconds. That kind of defeats the design purpose. Like, I have other thoughts about the overall structure of this that I'm not going to get into right now, but like, the HP does feel about right for that. But is it really that long, Cedra? Is it actually? Like, yes, I'm talking a lot while I do this. I probably will have ended up devoting about 6 hours to this by the time I'm done. Is that excessive for something every month? Like, that's 90 minutes a week. You can spread that out. Because you're doing the champion swap, you're only ever missing one character. If you have to free them up, you only have to do one fight to swap them out for someone else. But for the average player, like that's kind of the point. If EQ is your main thing, you're probably not doing a lot with other pieces of content. I'm really not sure that 6 hours a month is too much. Like that almost feels like what we should be delivering to me, right? It's our monthly content. It's some of our only repeatable monthly content. I kind of feel like we have a responsibility for it to be that much playtime. But that's the thing. You shouldn't just look at it that way, Cedra. Again, it is our monthly content. It is not supposed to have like if you look at it from a purely endgame perspective and you go, well, from a time to rewards ratio, this is bad. This isn't as good as the other things I do, then yeah, that'll look bad, but that's not the point. That is not the design intent of the monthly content. It's not supposed to be as efficient. And yes, it was too costly this month, but that's because the tuning was off. That doesn't mean that it's taking too long, right? I don't think 6 hours a month is too high. I think 6 hours a month and costing 30 revives is too much for the average player. But yeah, we'll see. Take care, TC. Um, yeah, wait, what? Oh, that I'm sorry. We have 3 Falcons. I got lost. I do think Joaquin is in pretty decent shape. A buff will help him quite a bit. Yeah, that is my biggest design concern, Vader, is that like I think the tuning on this, the attack is too high, but I think it's overall closer than a lot of people are saying. I think a lot of the criticisms come from kind of other factors, right? Nothing we do to the tuning fixes the problem that the way this is currently set up, ramp champions and ramp champions and synergies don't get to shine. That is a loss that is a fundamental problem with the setup here. And like that is what I would rather focus on. Like sure, cut the attack by 30% and then let's try and do something to reintroduce those. That would be what my focus would be on. I don't actually think it's too long. Like the funny thing is, as a content creator, as someone who likes to have things to stream with y'all and who does not like just doing hour upon hour of getting my butt kicked in battlegrounds, I actually like that there's basically 3 streams guaranteed I can get out of this stuff every month. Anyway, we're up to the boss. I'm doing the same thing again because it worked well for me down below, and I want to see how much the willpower helps here. Yeah, exactly, wait. Like, if you compare it to last month, it takes much longer than that number of fights would last month, but the tuning last month was too low. Rosters had progressed. That wasn't the point. EQ fights are not supposed to feel like Battlegrounds or less. Like, there needs to be a place in the game where you can actually use 4 bars of power and not go, I don't know, I feel like that's probably not what I was supposed to do. I messed up not killing in 3 bars. Like, there needs to be places in the game where you can flex a little bit more, and I like EQ as one of those spots. I understand what you're saying there, CJ. I would just much prefer it be a bit easier than it be significantly faster. Oh, I'm not touching Arena again, Arun. I did enough. I've done enough Arena streams in my time. I ain't going back. Oh, Jessica. Ma'am, thank you. Come here. Whoops. That was bad. That was very bad. She caught me. Okay. Come here. Would have been nice if that crit. All right. Yeah, I just don't agree with you there, Chris. Like, I know if you look at the numbers, it looks like endgame content. I don't think that's how the fights play out. Like, playing into the nodes with rank 3s, I'm still finishing a lot of fights in 3 bars. That's not endgame content. If the nodes aren't allowing enough champions to play into them, if you're dying before you can get into your rotation, that's bad, right? If as you're being forced down into the depths of your roster, you feel like you are dying too quickly to punch up, that's bad. But if the fights feel long because you're punching up with characters that aren't even trying to play into the bonuses, that's kind of by design. Yeah, people do go by feeling, and that is my point. Like the numbers are not the problem. Like people will go by feeling, but then they'll go look at the numbers and say, "See, the numbers are clearly too high." But like that's not how it works, really. And hey, Jason, thank you so much for the super chat. I appreciate you as always. Curious on the thought of how close the rewards are for exploring classic versus elder with higher prestige. Hmm, that's a good question. I don't know. I haven't really looked at the difference. What milestone do you get from just doing classic? I mean, I do think that there shouldn't be that much of a difference because the point of Elder, from a design standpoint, was to be somewhat optional. And for it to feel at all optional, like you have any control over your difficulty, it shouldn't feel like you're giving up everything, right? So 24 versus 36, right? That makes sense to me. Like you'll be missing it. Oh, that's kind of the other thing is one of the tuning dials that we intentionally um turned on the tuning is that the higher your prestige is, the lower on the milestone track some of the caps on resources are, right? So, like, for somebody with a lower prestige, maybe you can only get X of a given resource, but for the lower prestige, they might have to go to milestone 32 to get X. And if they only go to milestone 24, they'll get like 60% of X. But you with a higher prestige might get that same X at milestone 21. And that is by design, right? Because like there have been, I'm not going to say that everything was perfect, right? I'm definitely not saying that. There have been discussions of how certain aspects of the system could make you feel punished for improving your roster, but that is one of the things I feel like we definitely got right. Is that improving your roster and improving your prestige allows you to get more for less effort. That was very intentional. And so I know you have to be on the higher side for prestige. If you're feeling like maybe classic is all you want to do and you're not losing out on that many rewards for it, to me that's a green flag. Yeah, yeah, I know you're not complaining, but like this is kind of both for you and the room. Like that sounds like a good thing to me. I hear you too, Bleezy. Like I would rather there be some challenge in my monthly content, but I do think one of the complaints that I am most persuaded by um is that there isn't much of an option to make things significantly easier. I am very sympathetic to that. Like, if what it currently felt like with 20% less attack was what it took to get the maximum rewards, I think that would be just about fine on difficulty. I have my design quibbles, but like that would be fine on difficulty. Um, but that's not necessarily something that we should force on everyone. And I think we can improve for the future how much we allow people to give up some of the rewards to make life easier. I think we can definitely do that better. Yeah, you'll be getting some things along the way, Twists, and then I think you just get it there. Mini account is struggling this month. I'm sure. I don't know that I will have time. I may give this a run with my alt at some point to test it, but I also think we've probably gotten enough feedback to know what we need to do, and so I like that'd be an interesting experiment, but I don't know that it's needed. Yeah, that is true. Wait, I honestly, I don't know that I should say this externally, but I'm going to. My personal take is that I think we at Kabam have gotten a little bit too used to the idea of tuning difficulty high because it's easier to tune it down than up. It is easier to tune it down than up, but sometimes tuning it too high to start with the expectation of tuning it down, is just some percentage of the time that experience is going to be unfun enough that people are going to be unhappy. And then you've kind of, they might even be as unhappy or more as they would have been with you increasing the difficulty later. And so then you kind of created the sentiment problem you were trying to avoid. And yeah, I think that we probably need to sometimes stick to our guns and say, we think this is actually exactly the right tuning, and if it is too easy, we will make it harder. And we just need to say that when we launch it and then actually follow through. Because if we do that, like even with this current tuning, we have people in the chat going, yeah, you're right, it's not that far off. Like, if we have to make something harder, I think there will be players who basically take our side and go, yeah, it was too easy for me. I want the ability to make it harder. Yeah, no. I think class-based is the way to go, Bleezy. I'll leave my other thoughts. See, the thing is, in the abstract, Gency, having 15 champions in each class with relevant RPG is exactly what you should be aiming for. But we have already talked about the RPG asks are probably a bit too narrow. Like the fact that each of these is a single RPG ask for the entire fight, and that it's generally a more dated ask, is the problem. Like, I get why it's all one run. That makes the health persistence thing more palatable. Personally, I kind of like, I'm just gonna say it. I was gonna leave it for internally, but like the way I'm imagining this a little bit differently, um, is to go back to the mutant one. There's 15 fights plus a boss, right? I kind of wish that there were still subdivided into 3 paths, and the first one just had like bright red letters on it that said Daunted. The second one had bright red letters on it that said Prowess. The third one had bright red letters on it that said like Bleed Resistance, right? Or Regen. Like, pick another key. And then you knew that that's what you had to focus on. And so, like, maybe that means that you're using both a 6-star and a 7-star onslaught because Daunted is newer. Like, forgive me a little bit for that example, but I think it's a clear one for the moment. But then, like, okay, if you're using 2 onslaughts for the Daunted set of 5, then you probably need to find somebody else for the Bleed Resistance one later. And so there's still, like, a push on your roster, but then it's not just having 15 mutants, it's having 15 mutants that cover different aspects of the mutant class, right? That's kind of what I want. And then the problem to solve, because that's not perfect, right? Like, I'm glad y'all are responding well to that, but then the problem to solve becomes, if that's your concept, how do you balance allowing synergies and ramp up champions to shine with us not wanting you to just run the entire Daunted lane with Onslaught, right? Because like I miss ramp up champions, but the reason this is the way it is because there is a fundamental design tension between allowing a Sabretooth to take 6 fights in a row and allowing an Onslaught to take 6 fights in a row. Because no, it wasn't solved by the recent one, Pablo. Synergies were allowed by that, but not ramping. And I consider both, like, they're 2 separate problems, but both of them bother me. I haven't put a lot of thought into this. I am kind of thinking out. Yeah, that's fine. I am kind of thinking out loud as I say this, but I don't know. That's what at least some of you come for. Um, so my next thought is that maybe the way around that is that instead of doing what we did last month, where you just degen to death if you reuse a character, maybe you do like a crossfight where okay, you've chosen to use Onslaught twice. Well, the second fight he's in, he has a 15% weakness on him. And the third fight he's in, he has a 25% weakness, and then like a 30 and 35 or something. So it's like you can do that, but it's better if you use somebody else. And then the idea there would be that a Cull, however you tune that, a Cull or a Sabretooth or an Aegon would gain enough from the ramp that they would blow past it. That's not perfect because it's difficult to like make reusing a really strong character feel less attractive and not mess with the ramp, but something along those lines might be the way to go. Like the synergy side of things, if you don't care about ramp up champions, and I do, but let's say for a minute you don't care about ramp up champions and all you care about synergies, then you just do what the Valiant Gauntlet did last time, and you have those like 3 sets of 5, each allow you a team of 5, so you can use synergies, but it has that same crossfight that doesn't let you use them twice, and you have to swap all of them out at the changeover. That would solve a lot of the problem. It just wouldn't solve the whole problem because I really would like to let our Sabretooths go nuts. And maybe solving part of the problem would be enough for now, but like that's I'm part of the reason I'm thinking out loud here is to try and give y'all some insight into just how many competing tensions and incentives there are in really nailing something like that. Yeah, I get where you're coming from, Jay, but the thing is that if the attack values come down significantly, and I think they should, then I'm not sure. I don't think you need to heal every node. Healing every 5, maybe. But I don't think you need to heal every node. And, like, yeah. We do not currently have tech for a slot that is synergy only. Yeah, like I said, TC, it's not perfect. Like, I was just throwing that out there as an example of the kind of thing that, if the tuning worked, would be what we would go with. Yeah. Same, Pablo. That is absolutely the hard part. You know, actually, maybe that's the solution. I'll get to your comment there in a minute, Pablo, because it's a good one. But maybe that's the solution, is just to literally create a ramp tag. And so then to do that thing where, like, you can then make it harsher, right? The first repeated fight, there's a 30% weakness, then 60, then 90, right? So by the time you get to the fourth fight with Onslaught, he's hitting like a 4-star. Solves that problem. But the weakness just doesn't apply at all if the character is tagged as a ramp champion. Or it's like much weaker. It's like 5, 10, 15, right? So you still have to actually do the ramp. Like, you would need to run that by quest, because then, like, the thing is that that solves the problems that we've set out, but it introduces another one, which is how design always goes, right? Because then the pushback you're going to get from higher ups, if you come at them with that, is, well, how do we incentivize collecting a broad roster, which this game needs to do? How do we incentivize collecting a broad roster if you just use the ramp up champions in every class? And so then maybe the answer is, I mean, yeah, maybe that's part of it, right, Pablo? Like, the Sabertooths, the Aegons only shine here, and so that's okay. And we just take the hit. And, like, you try and make sure that, like, to use our example there, if the nodes were asking for prowess, daunted, and bleed resistance, then you would be running into an issue because Sabretooth doesn't have any of those 3 keys. And so you would have to, like, endure your way through an apocalypse ramp fight to then give Sabretooth the Horseman, and then you would only have 3 fights to ramp him. And so then at that point, maybe that's worth it. Like, there's something there. I'm going to keep thinking about that one. I guarantee you, if we do that, people will complain about the champions we don't include in the ramp tag. Like, Serpent's a good example. I think Serpent would count as a ramp champion, but, like, there's an argument that it's subtle enough that he doesn't need it. I don't know. But, like, one person I'm thinking of is Shothra or Galen, right? They technically ramp. Terax ramps. I don't think any of those 3 would deserve tag. And if we kept it limited enough, and as long as, like, even if there was one set of 5 that say every month that Sabretooth or Aegon just demolished, and you were rewarded for investing in a Sabretooth because it allowed you to, like, focus on 11 champions for monthly content instead of 15, then maybe that's just okay, right? And that's part of how we make ramp up champions matter. And then the weakness or the degen allows us to let you bring synergies, and then you still have to trade. Okay, yeah, that might work. Would we consider a swap node where we only need to swap 4 of 5? Probably not. Sinister's a good question, Jency. I think that would be a team discussion. Maybe. That's very kind, Jason. I appreciate that. Going back to the music thing, that was actually the reason that I went for the balance job first, is because I did not really consider myself creative enough for this kind of work. I was like, I can polish other people's stuff. I'm quite good at it. I don't think I can come up with things. And so, like, it's been a really nice thing to get over the imposter syndrome there since I got this job, and I actually am confident in my own creativity to some extent. It's nice. 15 to 20% heal after each fight does make some sense. I've had that thought as well. I think it might actually be too strong, though. Because, I mean, the biggest issue is we don't have the tech for it, but, like, maintaining your health fight after fight should be a little bit of a challenge. And technically, like, 15% isn't making up for if you lose 80%. I'll grant you that, but, like, it still might remove too much of that element. Because the other problem with the system that I proposed of, like, 5, then you swap out 5, then you swap out 5, is that unless you're using a ramp-up champion, you don't need to persist health at all. But then you probably solve that by when you're forced to swap out 5, the health persists for all 5 of them. And so then you're looking at it and you go, okay, I've got 3 characters at 80%, 1 at 60, and 1 at 20. Well, the 1 at 20%, I need to swap in a really good healer for. The 1 at 60, maybe somebody with some sustain, but yeah. The issue there, Jay, is just that willpower is bonkers strong. And if we don't specifically block out willpower when we're giving characters multiple non-damaging debuffs as part of a node's identity, it tends to trivialize it. And we fully understand that there are knock-ons, and I have thoughts about addressing those knock-ons, but I'm not going to get into them right now because they're complicated. But that is why that's there. See, that's the thing, Pablo. I don't think ramp champions should be excluded from the force swap in this hypothetical that we're coming up with, because then, like, there is a huge difference in roster building incentives between a ramp champion replacing the need for 4 characters and replacing the need for 14 characters, right? And you are completely right, Bleezy, because, like, that is something that we actively want, is the ability to ship more ramp up champions without just, like, them getting either ignored or being too strong. It's so difficult to do. Um it's a good question, Images. I think the fastest answer is that we were honestly developing both concurrently. We were iterating on the Valiant Gauntlet as we were also building the scaling difficulty. And so, like, we could incorporate some of the learnings, but yeah, it's kind of difficult to have them fully cross-pollinate all the time, if that makes sense. Yeah, EK. Same page there. Not necessarily, TC. I mean, for one thing, keep in mind that they would probably be class restricted in this thing that we're discussing, right? Um, which means that, like, to use the Sabretooth example, wouldn't have Sasquatch. And so other synergies become more important then, right? Like some of the mutant class ones. I also don't think that we have the ability to gate something where it's like, all right, you have to bring 4 mutants, and you can either bring a 5th mutant or one person from any other class. I don't think we currently have that filtering tech, and that would also help in this kind of situation. Hmm. Yeah, that is really interesting, Madrox, because you're right. They used to be some of the most important characters. Oh, yeah. Thank you, Pablo, for bringing me back to that, because I probably just need to end the stream soon. We've been this has been a great conversation, but I need lunch. Um, so the revamping versus iterating, I understand why you feel that way. I think the problem there is that, or the rub there, I should say, is that we as designers feel a very strong pressure to get things right on release. And so, even though we do ask that you allow us to iterate, that still means that we feel a very strong pressure to do as much iteration and reinvention and all of that as we possibly can internally before we show it to you. And the net result of that is very often like, okay, we tried a thing and we ran into all of these problems and we got all of this feedback. So now let's iterate on it. And then we iterate on it a little bit, a little bit, a little bit. And then we go, you know what? There's this fundamental flaw in the design. So we need to completely revamp it to try and address all of those problems at the same time and then iterate on it, iterate. And then by the time that iteration 2, like 2.0, gets to you, it looks nothing like 1.0. But 1.123 all looked pretty similar to 1.0. It's just that the trick is 1.4 changed a lot and then things went from there, right? I think that's just kind of an unavoidable consequence of the fact that you don't have full transparency into everything we do, and you shouldn't. But yeah, I get where you're coming from. No, I think it's a nostalgia that a lot of us share, Ian. A lot of us miss synergies. Like, designers miss synergies. It's a real bummer to, like, feel like you have a cool little thing that is a flavorful nod between or to something that happened in the lore. You've really allowed 2 characters to shine a bit more together than they did on their own, and then no one will ever use it, right? Like, unless the 2 characters are different enough in the utility they bring and strong enough that they're like going to take a war path together, no one will ever care. And that is overstating it. Some people will care, but it's not a fun feeling, you know? My latest was Nico J, and my next one is in November. I hear you on that, EK, and I'm generally sympathetic to it. The problem potentially would be that, like, we would probably need to ask you to do the whole thing at the higher difficulty. And if I did a lower difficulty and got to milestone 25, let's say, and then I upped the difficulty and I did the whole thing again to get to milestone 27, I might not be happy about it. But that might be what is fair. And sometimes it's not worth building things that are fair if it won't make people happy enough. But I do hear you. Yeah, I think that's a fair way to put it, Pablo. Yeah, exactly, Ian. Like, I want to use my freaking Young Avengers team. I added the tag to the game for a reason. I gave Kate a leader synergy for it. Like, I like pretty much all of them. I want to use my Young Avengers. That kind of thing. Yeah, there is no way in heck that we decide to, like, leave the old EQ, which, because I don't think y'all realize how much work the old EQ was. Like, every single boss design had to scale down across multiple difficulties where you could pull out this node and then that node and like all of this scale. It was so horrendously inefficient when the only purpose of 3 or 4 of the difficulties was just for people to farm units. Like, that's a terrible thing to have in the game. That is a horrific return on investment. And so, like, EQ needed to change. But I know it's not perfect. Anyway, now I'm going to turn off the stream before we get to the exact 2-hour mark. But thank you again for everybody hanging out, asking questions. This was a good one. And yeah, I will see you later on today.